This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. In this tutorial video, we'll show you how to make a front curtain or windshield for your golf cart using clear vinyl window material from Sailrite. You can also make your own rain curtains for the sides of your golf cart using the same principles as shown in this video for the front curtain. We will use marine snaps to snap the windshield to our golf cart, and it will be designed to fold down or to be rolled up and snapped in place. This golf cart windshield video will include how to measure for materials required, how to cut your facing to size, how to sew that facing around the perimeter of your clear vinyl window material, sewing binding around the perimeter of the curtain. We'll be snapping our curtain to our golf cart, so we'll show you how to install snaps. These are marine quality snaps. We'll be showing you how to install Gypsy snaps, one-way snaps, and standard snaps. You'll have a variety of choices of snaps to choose from after watching this video. Then, the last step will be adding a roll-up webbing strap so you can roll up your curtain panel and snap it in place. Let's get started and show you how to build a golf cart windshield using clear vinyl window material from Sailrite. To begin, you need to take a few measurements of the area where the curtain will be installed. We are simply making a front curtain panel, so we will take a height measurement and also a width measurement. Measure at a few locations to check for an irregular shape. If it has one, you may have to do some patterning. We'll be building a curtain panel that matches the frame, and our frame is a perfect rectangle. We'll write those measurements down on paper. Now that we know the size of our clear window material or curtain panel, we need to go to the Sailrite website and select a window material. There are multiple choices of clear vinyl window materials in multiple sizes, brands, and thicknesses. We're going to choose a Regalite 30 gauge, which is a high quality clear vinyl window material. A high quality clear vinyl is called a sheet good. It is pressed and polished in layers. Creating this pressed and polished vinyl makes a flanged edge that is typically cut away as waste. Here we are measuring and marking our clear vinyl to size using a grease marking pencil and a straight edge. The gauge of the window material refers to the thickness. We're using a 30 gauge vinyl material, which is measured at about 30 thousandths of an inch. Sheet good vinyls are higher quality than a rolled good vinyl, though a sheet good does roll as well. OC, Strataglass, Crystal Clear, and Regalite are all high-quality sheet good vinyls. They can easily be cut with scissors. The curtain's edge can be made from a variety of materials. Here we're using Top Gun. For the edges of our curtain, we're going to cut strips from this Top Gun material that are 2 inches wide. You'll find the Top Gun at the Sailrite website. Hover over Fabric and select Top Gun. Top Gun 1S only has color on the top side. We're going to choose just regular Top Gun. There are multiple colors to pick from. Because our facing will only be 2 inches wide, 1 yard will go a long way in making a lot of facing. Other materials such as snaps and double-sided tape and thread, and even a sewing machine can be purchased at the Sailrite website. For a full materials list, refer to the end of this video. Our Top Gun fabric is 62 inches wide. We'll now cut strips from it. To cut our 2-inch wide facing, we're using the clear acrylic ruler, a rotary cutter, and a cutting mat. When cutting fabrics like Top Gun, Weblon, Herculite, Shelterite, and Stamoid, those edges of the fabric that are cut do not unravel. Other fabrics like Sunbrella Marine Grade or Top Notch 9 can be used as well, but those should be cut with a hot knife because their edges may unravel slightly. To attach the facing strips and make it fairly easy, we're going to use seam stick for canvas along the outer edge on our clear vinyl window material. We want this double-sided tape, part number 129, to be very close to the raw edge of the clear vinyl window material. We'll peel back the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and then we'll carefully baste these 2-inch strips of Top Gun material along the edge of our clear vinyl material. We want to do this in a manner so that the raw edge of our 2-inch strip is flush with the raw edge of the clear vinyl. We'll cut off any excess at the ends. Then we'll do that on all 4 sides of our front curtain panel. The reason we do not apply seam stick basting tape to the inner edge of our 2-inch strip is because that will be visible from the inside of the golf cart, since we are not putting a strip of fabric on the inside of the curtain panel. So the only one that will be visible would be the outer seam stick from the inside of the curtain panel. But that too will also be hidden because we are going to sew on a 1-inch binding all around the perimeter. Decide which facing will go over top of the other at the corners. Consider which direction the curtain will hang and try to place the vertical facing over the horizontal facing, so water will flow over the horizontal facing rather than into it. We actually got it wrong here. Now we'll take it over to the sewing machine and start at one of the corners. This is the inside edge of our facing strip. We'll do a little reversing there because we are not going to sew all the way to the edge. We're only going to sew the inner perimeter of this facing at this time. Binding will be sewn around the outer edge. We want our stitch to be about 1/8 inch away from the raw edge of our facing. We are using the Deluxe 5.5 inch magnetic guide to help guide our project. If you don't have that, you can place masking tape on the bed of your sewing machine and use it as a guide. When we get to the opposite corner, we will stop with our needle buried at the appropriate position to make a 90-degree turn. We will lift our presser foot and rotate on the buried needle. Once we have it rotated, we'll lower our presser foot and then continue to sew. We'll have to unroll our material and we'll fold it back so that we can sew this opposite leg, or in the opposite direction I should say. And we'll repeat that process when we come to the next corner. Here we're approaching our starting point, and we'll do some reversing there as well to lock our stitch in place. We will not sew the outer edge. Instead, we will install binding for a finished look. The inner perimeter of our facing is sewn down. Next, we need to sew on binding around the outer perimeter. We need to make sure that our facing is laying nice and flat. Remember, we only used seam stick or double-sided tape around the outer perimeter. If it's not laying perfectly flat, pull it up and rebaste it down. For some reason, clear vinyl window material seems to attract excess double-sided tape, and it looks like scratches, but it's not. It's double-sided tape typically, and usually can be removed with an alcohol prep pad, as seen here. Now we'll take it back to our sewing machine and sew on our 1-inch binding. This is a top-notch 9 binding, and we've fed it through our 1-inch swing-away binder. We've also rolled up the window material to make it easier to sew each side of our binding in place. Notice the binding just runs off the corner. We'll be cutting it and laying a second piece of binding over that corner and sewing it in place. If you want to make sure that your binding is pushed well up against the edge of your fabric assembly, make sure you pay attention to the exiting point of the binder, not the entry point of the binder. The entry point of the binder is designed with a hump to help keep kinks out of the binding, but that hump unfortunately works against you, because if you pay attention to shoving your assembly in at the entry point, the fold of your binding will not be pushed up against the raw edge of your fabric assembly. So be sure to always pay attention to the exiting point, not the entry point. Here's what our binding looks like. Looks good. Now we'll trim off the corner. Now that one side of binding is installed, we'll take it to the table and roll it in the opposite direction so that we can do another side. Another hint to sewing binding is to sew a small section, say 1 inch of binding, before you feed your assembly into the binder attachment. Then feed your assembly into the attachment and sew the next leg. There is no reason right now to do any reversing. because we will be sewing a binding over the corner, and that's when we want to do reversing. So here we take it to the table and fold it in the opposite direction. Now we're going to do some reversing since we're sewing over a previous leg of binding. So here at the corner we'll do a little bit of reversing to lock our stitch in place. We also reverse a little bit outside of our panel assembly, and that is a very good idea. You'll be trimming that off and then using a hot knife to seal the edge, but that keeps our binding in place as our stitches go outside of the edge of our curtain panel. Here we are coming to the opposite corner. We'll need to do some reversing here as well. We did not show trimming off the excess, but here it is completed. Now we still need to touch the ends, or the corners I should say, with a hot knife to keep it from unraveling and to give it a finished look. So we'll touch the edge of the binding with a hot knife. This is a Top Notch 9 binding. And what I typically like to do is, even though it hurts a little bit, is to take my fingers after it's cooled a little bit and press it together. That makes for a great looking end, though it does hurt slightly. We'll be installing snaps next. We have a variety of snaps to install. Our binding has been sewn on all the edges. Now we'll take it to our golf cart and use spring clamps and clamp it in place. This will help us to determine where snaps should be installed. Clamp it so it's nice and taut. After it's clamped or positioned in place, be sure you're happy with where all edges are resting. Once you're happy with its location, we'll use a Sharpie marker to indicate where snaps should be installed on the frame of our golf cart. We definitely want one at the corners. Typically, snaps are spaced anywhere from 18 to 24 inches apart. There is no rule for that. The more snaps, the more secure your window curtain panel will be. We're going to also install snaps at the bottom corner. Continue to place small dots with your Sharpie marker where you want each stud snap to be installed. At our bottom edge of our curtain panel, we'll be installing 4 snaps. We will be designing our front curtain so it will fold down halfway to allow airflow for the passengers. Not only that, but we'll also be designing it so that it can be rolled up. We'll do that a little bit later on. So you have a choice between the two, or you can do both. Here again, we're using our spring clamps to determine how far we want that panel to fold down. We want it to fold down far enough so we can snap it to the bottom facing, the horizontal facing at the bottom edge, using Gypsy snaps. Now we'll place a mark where a stud needs to be installed at the fold. You're probably thinking, there's no way that a snap will hold when the material's folded back like this, and you'd be correct. But that won't be the case if we use a one-way snap here, which we will. To ensure that we get the snap on the other side correct, we're going to fold our material back, our curtain material, and measure to determine where it is on the left side to determine where it should be on the right side. We'll be installing our snap studs using the Snaprite surface mount stud die, so they'll be riveted in place. If you're going to use standard snaps with a wood body screw, you'd still drill 1/8-inch holes at each location for a snap stud. Here you can see the difference between a one-way stud on the right and a standard stud on the left. We'll be installing this one-way or pull the dot snap stud at the middle position so we can fold our window back without it unsnapping. Here we're using the surface mount stud die. We've installed a rivet into that die and then placed the one-way snap stud into the die. And now we'll place the rivet through the 1/8-inch hole that we made and depress the lever of our riveting gun, setting the snap stud in place. When using the Snaprite surface mount stud die, we do expect the mandrel to break. There it broke. We'll depress the lever one more time, and now our snap stud is installed. We'll do the same on the opposite side at the middle position. Now the remainder of our snaps will be just standard snaps, so we'll drill the holes for those. An 1/8-inch hole is drilled here, and we will pick our standard snap now. The same process when using the Snaprite surface mount stud die. A rivet is inserted in the die, then our standard dot snap is installed in the die, the rivet post is placed through the 1/8-inch hole, and we depress the lever until the mandrel breaks. Once all the snap studs are installed in your frame, we're going to reposition the curtain panel using our spring clamps right atop all of the snap studs. We will start by marking only one snap stud at the top corner. It doesn't matter if it's the left or right. It is best to mark and install one snap at a time. We'll be using Sailrite's SnapRite system to do this. Into the socket die, a mandrel has been inserted, then a socket snapped on top of it. It obviously has been snapped to our stud that's installed on our frame. We'll push the mandrel through our fabric assembly at the position that we marked. Now, in lieu of a button, we're not going to be using a button, but rather a Gypsy stud. So we have the stud die screwed to our riveting tool. We'll push the Gypsy stud in the middle of that die. It holds it securely in place. Then we'll install the Gypsy stud with the socket on the back side. This will allow our curtain panel to be folded back and snapped to the bottom edge of our curtain. So when the window is open halfway, it will not flap around in the wind. So our sockets to the back side and our Gypsy studs to the front. Now we'll move to the opposite top corner and we'll pull our curtain taut and mark its position. We'll follow that same procedure for installing yet another Gypsy stud here instead of a button. So Gypsy stud on the outside surface and a socket underneath. The Sailrite does carry other tools to install snaps like this, like the famous Press and Snap tool. But in this application, we're using the Sailrite SnapRite system. Looking ahead, here's how the Gypsy snap will snap to the bottom edge of our curtain. A pull the dot or a one-way snap is a locking snap. That's next. Our top edge is snapped in place. We're going to use those spring clamps yet again to keep our panel pulled taut and start marking for other snap locations. This happens to be the location for our pull the dot or one-way snap stud. So we've marked the position where it should go, and we need to use a pull the dot or one-way socket. It has a little locking pip here. The SnapRite socket die has a flat side to its die, so the one-way socket snaps on so that the pip is even with the flat side of that die. Now the mandrel can be pushed through the bottom of the die. Taking a look at this socket, it's a one-way socket. It has a pip at the bottom. This is the side that will release, while the top side without the pip will lock. Since all the pressure on our snap will be at the top side when the window is folded down, we want that pip to be facing down as it's shown here. A pull the dot or one-way snap will only release where that pip is located. So the pip is down here. Now we push our mandrel through our fabric assembly at the position that we marked on the fabric assembly. Nice thing is we can still rotate the die so that the pip is in the appropriate spot, so you should always check it. We want the pip to be facing down. Now we can push our fabric up against it, which will help to keep it in the correct position. A one-way snap, or the pull the dot snap, has a special button. This button is for the SnapRite system. It has a hole in the center. We want to position it so the DOT is down the arm of the riveting tool. Because the button is labeled with pull the dot on the top, that gives reference to those who are using the fastener to know that it is a locking snap, so they don't accidentally pull on one of the sides that lock, but instead, hopefully, they pull on the side that's labeled DOT, which should be facing down if done correctly, and it is. The pip on the inside is facing up, and the pip against the fabric is facing down. To snap this, cant it slightly upwards along the bottom edge and snap the bottom edge on last. There we go. Now we'll be installing the regular snaps. We'll be installing sockets and buttons. Sailrite recently introduced what we call the Sailrite cutting block and die holder. It's a cutting block, but it's also utilized with the SnapRite system. So here we're going to insert a mandrel through the socket die and install just a regular socket snap. and we will place this inside of the die holder of this cutting block. This is the first demonstration of a regular snap. It's not a Gypsy snap and it's not a one-way snap. We use a Snaprite button. It has a hole to allow the access of the mandrel. A neat way to position a socket is to actually take a soapstone pencil, grease pencil, or chalk and mark the stud, and then press the fabric up against that stud, and notice that it leaves a great mark that you can easily see. Utilizing Sailrite's new cutting block and die holder, we can press the mandrel through that location without hurting our fingers. Now, with the button die installed in our riveting tool and the Snaprite button in that, we can place it over the mandrel and depress the lever until the barrel of the button is rolled over nicely. The mandrel does not necessarily need to break. Now the socket and the button are installed in our fabric assembly. At the top of our curtain, we installed Gypsy studs. So when we roll the window down halfway, we can snap it at the bottom of our curtain. So now we need to determine where the Gypsy stud will come in contact with the bottom flange and mark its position so that a socket can be installed there. We'll do that on both sides. However, it is best to install one and then mark the second side after that. We're going to insert our Snaprite socket die into the Sailrite cutting block and die holder, and we will install a snap socket onto the die. Now we will unsnap our assembly and punch it through the forward portion of our curtain panel, the mandrel that is, at the spot we marked on the fabric. Now on the back side we will install a button. This is a Snaprite button, and we depress the lever until we get a firm feel. Now we can remove our die, and our socket is now on the outside of our curtain panel, so it can be used for the Gypsy snap. And we'll install the other side in the same manner. We will not show that. Now when we unsnap the curtain at the top, we can snap the Gypsy studs to the socket on the bottom facing. Now if you prefer to roll up your window, the next chapter will show you how to make a webbing strap with snaps so you can roll it up and snap it in place at the top. An alternative is to have your window roll up. So here we're using sunbrella webbing and sealing the end with the Sailrite Edge hot knife. Then using one of Sailrite's hole cutters and the Sailrite cutting block and die holder, we will cut a hole in the webbing about a ½ inch from the end of the webbing centered. On the lip of our roof of the golf cart at the center location, we're going to drill an 1/8 inch hole. We'll use the Snaprite surface mount stud die and a rivet and install a stud at that location. But before we do that, we're going to secure the webbing on the underside of our roof lip. The stainless steel rivet has been placed in the die and the snap stud. We push it through the hole that we drilled in the roof, and on the back side we will install the webbing utilizing that 1/8 inch hole we made in the webbing, and install a washer. In fact, we have 2 washers. One that's rather large and one that's small enough so that our rivet will make a nice mushroom head. So here's our very small washer. It'll go on the back, and then we'll start to depress our lever with our riveting tool, and this will install the stud and the webbing at the same time, and the washer will keep the webbing from pulling away from our rivet, because we have a larger washer and a smaller washer. We need to depress the lever until the mandrel breaks of the rivet. There we go. Here's what it looks like from underneath the lip. You can see the larger washer with a smaller washer on top and the mushroom head of the rivet. Next, we'll install a button and a socket on the end of the webbing. We've determined the length of webbing that we want by rolling up the window. We did not show that. And we will install this button and socket on the end of the webbing so that it will snap up to that stud on our rooftop. Now we can unsnap the window at the bottom and on the sides and roll it up and then snap it in position utilizing that webbing strap. All the fingerprints from working with this clear vinyl window material curtain can be cleaned up with a vinyl cleaner. Or, because we designed it so it can fold in half, we can unsnap the top half, fold it down, and snap it to the bottom facing, and we have a window that's open halfway. It's your choice. Coming up is the materials list and the tools that we use to make this clear window panel for our golf cart. You'll find a variety of clear vinyl window materials that are available from Sailrite. In this video, we use the Sailrite Snaprite system to install snaps, though there are other fastener tools that you may want to check out at the Sailrite website. If you have questions about any of the products or processes that we showed in this video, be sure to give us a call or email us. We're glad to help. If you'd like to see related videos to this golf cart project, click on a video here. For more free videos like this, be sure to check out the Sailrite website or subscribe to the Sailrite YouTube channel. Be sure to click the bell at the YouTube channel to be notified of new videos that come available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.